Welcome to Thursday Night Talk. This is a show Humboldt, the local issues and the local personalities. I'm Talvi Freed, your local host, and I'll be here with you for the next hour. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a pretty difficult topic for many. We will have a call-in portion of the show later if you have your opinions on this, because I know so many do, especially because so many people have to deal with this in a day-to-day life, either within their own minds or within others. And that mental health and matters. Are proposals for mental health courts a real possibility? Are the county and cities allocating enough resources? And is it even possible to keep up with such costs? What about resources for our unhoused population? And we might even be going into what even is mental health versus a mental health really confused people out there. Our guests tonight are Eureka Mayor Kim Bergel, who also recently convened at the Mental Health Town Hall in Eureka earlier this month. I believe that was the first week of this month. Lea Nagy from the Humboldt branch of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm just going to assume that throughout the rest of the show, we're going to be calling it NAMI. So be aware of that. We've got Commander Leonard LaFrance from Eureka PD's Community Services Engagement Team. And we also, of course, have Gardner Carlson, former employee of Napa State Hospital. And welcome everyone to the show. You're allowed to say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Yes, it's a long overdue conversation to be having, I feel. And I know that when I say long overdue, I'm not saying that it hasn't been happening. It's just that it feels like in the last while, there's been a lot of resources, grants with the city of Eureka getting funding, with the county getting funding. And so I want to start off with the beginning of this month, because Kim, you were at the mental health town hall. And I just want to ask what you saw there, because that was kind of a forum for people to voice their concerns outside of here.
Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit about that. So the mayor's initiative is mental health. And so we will be having town halls quarterly. So the next one's coming up June 3rd. This particular one was primarily about Mental Health 101. It was just trying to look at some of the things that we have available. Was it well attended? And the great part about that was that it was a safe space and that people were respectful when they talked. People really were heard, and there were some great questions.
So Leonard, I know you deal every single day, well, every work day, at least. I hope you don't have to deal every single day, though I know how life can go, with what a lot of people can see as like the problematic individuals. And I'm using air quotes. And I'm wondering what you've seen, like what is mental, what are the biggest concerns on the streets and within the system right now?
Sure. So I think the biggest issues we see is the safety of the individuals themselves, and also the safety of the entire community that is often engaging with them or trying to engage with them, which has been very challenging. But there's so much overlap between substance use disorder and mental health. That's really hard to decipher between the two at times. And so, getting the outcomes that we want is getting people ultimately stabilized, the mental health, SUD treatment wise, and then ultimately housing, employment, whatever the outcome would be, has been pretty difficult. It's just a very, very complex issue that everyone in this, especially in the city and across the state of California, actually the whole West Coast sees on a daily basis.
Well, I want to ask, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Because, well, let's start off from the beginning. So what is mental health? I'm not sure anyone can popcorn answer this one. Perhaps we'll go with Lea.
What is mental health? I think mental health is how you feel about yourself. It's how you adjust to the world. It's a combination of things. And of course, we know mental health can be altered or changed with substance abuse, alcohol, and mental illness. So, you talk about taking care of your mental health with exercise, good diet, plenty of sleep. So it's really a holistic look at the whole body. And we feel that mental illness is a chemical biological brain disorder. It's nobody's fault, and it's a disease just like tuberculosis or diabetes. But so we strive for good mental health, I guess you would say, or maybe normal mental health, but normal is kind of an odd word. But good mental health means you're taking care of your brain. You have a healthy brain, you're feeling content and energized and that kind of thing. Does that help out a little?
Yeah, and I just want to ask, I have my own ideas of the answers of all of this. So what is the difference between a mental illness and a mental health crisis?
I think that's a challenging conversation. I think the people say we all have some form of mental illness. Most of us can get along in society just fine with it's not impacting our behavior. Then we have about 20% of the United States has either a significant or I can't remember the word on it, but has a
diagnosable
prevalence of mental illness that impacts them. And so I think, we see a lot of people every day that have mental illness, but when it's a crisis, actually, someone's now acting extremely erratic, their safety is at risk. And that's where we look at for those crises, either for us, from a law enforcement standpoint, looking at mental health hold. So someone who's a danger to themselves, they want to hurt themselves, they're danger to other people, they are homicidal, or they want to aggressively assault other people, or people who are gravely disabled, that they're not cognitively there. They can't recognize, hey, this is dangerous. It's cold out. I have no clothing. I don't know where to go. It's just not, they're just not present in that moment. And so that's how I look at the two when I try to find them, if you can do that.
So when somebody has a crisis, which to me, it's sounding like a mental health crisis, is when somebody who may or may not typically have mental health issues, they do themselves or others. Around here, be it the county, which I feel like Eureka kind of is a sort of, it's the hub. We have Semper Virens here. We have the county jail here, which unfortunately is where a lot of people go who are having a crisis. Though, not to, what happens, like what's the step-by-step process of, say, there's somebody in a crisis where they're not a significant threat, but they're still perhaps a harm to themselves, or they are still self-aware where they need help. Like what happens for them to actually get to a place of either help, or do they get help? What happens?
Sure. So I can talk about it a little bit. So we break down a couple of different things. A behavioral crisis, it could be because of mental illness, could be because of substance use or they're under the influence. It could be a medical condition, either medications aren't working right, could be like a UTI, could be a TBI, traumatic brain injury, or a urinary tract infection that causes chemicals in the brains not to function correctly and can put a person in crisis. It could be situational. You're driving down the street and you see the red lights behind you, a cop stopping you, right? So it's these different situational stress. From our standpoint, if we determine that you're unable to care for yourself because you're gravely disabled, danger to yourself or danger to others, the process is, in theory, we could put someone on a 5150 hold. And from that standpoint, we would bring them to currently the ER. If they didn't meet that criteria, then we have other avenues we can also assist them with, either with our CARE, which is Crisis Alternative Responsive Eureka Team, which is our sibling unit with CSET, or they can be brought to same-day services over at 720 Wood Street, or connect with their primary health doctor. There's other ways to go around to divert people away from going on a hold, which is the effort that we make every day, is to divert folks away from going on a mental health hold and being placed for up to 72 hours in a hospital.
So what exists, 5 years ago? This is a fairly new program that has been asked for by the public as kind of, from what I'm gathering, from what I've read and have talked to people about, it's an intermediary form of sort of kind of like if you want to go, like if you're just working situation or social worker situation? I'm not exactly sure what it is because perhaps I haven't talked to the right people. Hopefully you guys are the right people to answer that, because I think that's a question a lot of people are wondering, which maybe Kim, I know you've been working really hard with, even when you were on city council, to get this going.
Mhm. So ask the question because you kind of went out.
Oh, sorry. Was that me rambling or the who knows?
No, that I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. What is the care program now? And is like what it didn't exist 5 years ago, and perhaps that's why I'm going in and out, is because I'm trying to form a question and I'm not it's such a new program. Instead of there's a crisis, let's call the cops, it's now there's a crisis, someone may call 911, they assess the situation, and then what happens from there?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think
I can
the
answer Kim if you want. I
Yeah,
can
That would be
answer.
great.
Yeah, so the CARE program is an alternate response program that we developed, really started pushing forward in January of 2022. It actually was a part of my master's capstone project. It was kind of foundational in doing that work. We looked at building CSET into a bigger team, including mental health professionals, medical professionals. And so they officially piloted in January of 2023, so about 3 months ago, although our managing mental health clinician was hired last August to develop the program even more. And so really the point of CARE is to, if calls come in for people who are in crisis, we can evaluate and say, hey, do we want to have a law enforcement response because there's a safety issue? Do we want to have a CARE response, or do we need a co-response? And so it's really looking at things from a 360-degree approach, saying, hey, often we don't need law enforcement to go to these calls. However, we're not naive enough to believe that we can completely remove law enforcement from these type of calls. And that's where we're at. So it's still piloting. Eventually, the long-term goal is to have 24/7 coverage. They'll be dispatched to calls. Currently, right now, it's being filtered out through myself and some of the other sergeants, or when upon requested. But it's the foundation of kind of getting this program moving forward, which I think is a very, very right direction for mental health in the community.
So
And I would 100% agree with that.
awesome. So Gardner, you worked at a actual hospital where I assume they intook patients for 5150 hold.
Yes, it went a little bit farther than that. Let me introduce you a little bit to Napa State Hospital. What we have here is there's two sides, the LPS side, and then we have the forensic side. On the forensic side, we have 1370 referred patients by the court, and they're incompetent to stand trial. What happens with the 1370 population is they are put through a program so they can regain competency, and then they go back to trial. Then they can become a 1026, not guilty by reason of insanity. So when they're serving their terms for 1026, not guilty by reason of insanity, it would be for the entire term that they would have been in jail or in prison, rather, for. And the model is changing a little bit. I might just throw this in a little bit. I don't think a lot of people really understand that.
There's so much to ask here. That's the difficulty of
Oh, I see.
such
Okay.
an issue.
Well, let me go back and just talk about in our system in dealing with mental illness. Napa State Hospital is a mental health hospital in California, of which there are 10 facilities. And within the whole state system, Napa State Hospital has different kinds of patients that are referred by the court. All of them are referred by the court. So the model is a client-centered rehabilitation model, which is relatively new. And there are about 1,200 patients that are involved, maybe more. So I was describing the different populations: incompetent to stand trial, not guilty by reason of insanity, and Murphy conservatorships on the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act patients who are greatly disabled because of developmental disabilities or mental disabilities.
How is that diagnosed?
Well, these people have if we want to start out, a simple example would be somebody who is arrested for murder, okay? And then during the court trial, they are found to be incompetent to stand trial because of their mental illness, or they're found to be not guilty by reason of insanity. Is that clear? Okay. So at that point, they are incarcerated into the mental hospital system.
So it sounds like you dealt with those, like you majority focused on those of a criminal nature.
Yes. That is true.
So I know we have a break coming up pretty shortly. When we get back, I want to ask more about what creates, which this is not necessarily for you, Gardner, though for everybody, what creates somebody who become insane? What are the causes of mental illness going on, and what are preventions that could be possible out there? You're listening to KZVH. This is Thursday Night Talk. I will be right back. Welcome back to Thursday Night Read. I'm here with Mayor Kim Bergel. We've got Lea Nagy from the Humboldt branch of NAMI, Commander Leonard LaFrance, and Gardner Carlson, former employee of Napa State Hospital. And we have been discussing mental health in Humboldt County in between our technical difficulties. So I'm glad you're sticking with us and appreciate that. What causes mental illness? Which sounds wild because a lot of people consider this an intrinsic thing, a chemical issue within people's minds. I want to ask, let's start with Lea. And
yeah, I was glad you asked me to answer that question, because that's really an important question. And there is a predisposition to mental illness. So if your grandparents or your parents had some mental health issues, it could be that, you're inherited you can inherit some of them. We believe it, like I said, it's a biological chemical brain disorder. It's nobody's fault. I have 4 beautiful sons. One of them out of the 4 happens to have serious mental illness. It was a throw of the dice that that particular child got mental illness. But I think one thing, if you know that you have somewhere in your history, which of course 1 in 4 people have a diagnosed mental illness, then you need to really take care of your brain. And we work with our grandchildren and our children. Don't overdo substances, don't do drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing, because if you have a fragile brain that has a predisposition to mental illness, those issues can topple you over into the other side of psychosis and serious mental illness. So, you know, there's just a rising rate of mental health issues, especially suicide due to COVID. Some environmental factors, you know, play into it. But they do say that 90% of suicides result from people with serious mental illness, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or depression. So that's why we really need to take care of our loved ones with mental health challenges so that they don't become seriously mentally ill. Does that answer it sort of, Talvi?
Sort of. I mean, I feel like people, as Leonard had said earlier, you know, everybody has mental health troubles sometimes, seasonal depression or whatnot. Not everybody full-blown schizo have a predisposition to it. And I wonder if there's environmental triggers as well. I know there's the ACE test that people can have, which is adverse childhood experiences. And I wonder if that can trigger something in the genetics or within somebody's brain. Like, I'm not sure if there's pure studies on that, though people who are, well, be mentally ill later, or is it, you know, where the ACE is the adverse childhood experiences, such as abuse, neglect, and trauma, and somebody who can be, I feel like people who have experienced trauma, and not just in a childhood experience, but also in adult experiences, whether they work in a certain or specific field. You have a lot of veterans in the PTSD. Like, is PTSD also considered a mental illness, or is that kind of a where does it's hard because, like, are people just born mentally ill, or can they become mentally ill over time?
Well, I think the answers could be both. You know, people are born with the predisposition to be mentally ill, but also people develop. I have one family member whose dad developed schizophrenia at age 60. That's very rare. It's usually early 20s. But getting back to your ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. If we know that if kids have 4 or more adverse event, you know, ACE scores, there's a 37-fold increase for a suicide attempt. We know that the higher the ACE score, the more fragile the person could be and more issues could happen. Does that help? And then PTSD, it is a mental health illness if it affects the person seriously, so it interferes with their life. You know, there are therapists and medications and that kind of thing that are used. And that, like you said, PTSD can be caused from trauma, you know, trauma in various, not only just war zones, but in domestic violence and things like that. But yeah, you've got it right, boy. The more trauma we have, the more things we go through. We have to be very careful to take care of our mental health. You know, I use the term post-traumatic stress growth. So I like to think that because of some of these challenges, I can grow stronger and be more resilient. There was an article in Psychology Today that talked about the surgeon at the North Pole or South Pole, I guess it was, that had to operate on herself, and the guy that was climbing, you know, Everest and got in trouble, but they became stronger because of it. So, and I want to let people know that people with mental illness, oftentimes there's a theory by K. Redfield Jameson that they are actually creative, gifted. If you know musicians and artists, you know, Van Gogh, Edgar Allan Poe, Abraham Lincoln, all these really charismatic, famous people had mental illness. And there's a book called Touched by Fire that goes into all that. But these are wonderful, creative people. So it's important that we you know, give them some compassion, empathy, and some support. So with that, I'll be quiet for a minute.
Okay. Kim, I know you're working on programs and ways to help all over the county. what tools are there to help somebody that they may have a position to go into a mental health crisis instead of having to go through a mental health crisis in order to get help?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So part of your question cut out again.
Oh no, that's always fun. Oh, I'm having the best technical day. Resources are out there or are being built for somebody who knows they have a predisposition to mental illness and who has, say, suffered traumatic events and can see themselves going down crisis mode, but is not there yet? What are the preventative measures before somebody goes into crisis mode?
Wow. Well, I am not the expert on this. We've got some in the room, but what I will say is that, you know, from where I sit, it's very complex. It's not a one size fits all solution, you know, depending on the situation. And I think too that, you know, one of the main things that I work with is developing connections with people so that when people do realize or decide that they want some help, they have somebody that they can trust and that they know. And I think our CSET team and our care program have done an excellent job of reaching out to people and you know, I don't know if befriending them is the right word, but certainly connecting with them so that when these things happen, they know that they're seen and that they're valuable people and that there is, you know, potential help out there. And that doesn't mean that people will always take the help, but, you know, just making those connections, I think, is a huge piece of it. And I think that's part of the thing that exacerbated the problem with COVID is that, you know, people are so isolated and we need each other. And so, you know, you get in your own brain for any amount of time, and that's a dangerous neighborhood to be alone, right? So certainly, I think that, you know, connection is huge as far as, you know, getting the help you need, and also at times moving away from whatever crisis you may be in, because you have people that you can reason things out with. Now, that's not always the case. And another question you asked is about the chicken or the egg. I honestly, I don't think it matters. I think that what happens is many people are afraid of what they don't understand. And so one of the things with our town halls is to allow people to educate folks on what's really happening so that, you know, we realize that, you know, just because someone has a different perspective or disorder doesn't mean that they're scary or, you know, gonna, you know, burn your house down or something crazy like that, you know. I think it's important just to learn that, you know, all people have value regardless of what's happening with them at any given moment.
It feels like I am in a room full of experts, but it feels like a room full of experts and like if somebody goes through care or CSET, it would be because either somebody is calling them in, or because they are at a crisis mode where.
No.
No,
I think one of the gifts of I'm sorry, just quickly, I think one of the gifts of the program, CSET and the care program, is that people we're connecting with people where they're at, regardless of where they're at in that moment. So we're connecting with people no matter what phase of crisis they're in, so that people get to know each other and can trust that connection. Sorry to cut you off, Commander.
it's okay.
Carry on.
Yeah, so really the purpose around the foundation set for both CSET, Community Safety Engagement Team, and CARE is proactive activity. So we want our officers from CSET, who again specialize in mental health, addiction issues, homelessness. They do a lot of different social work, pretty effective social workers. The numbers would tell us that. But it's proactive. So they're in the field, they're meeting people where they're at, they're knowing by name. They have, the folks that are on the streets or in housing that are struggling. They have phone numbers they can call directly to officers. They build those connections to prevent crisis from happening. So we can tell, hey, Joe is escalating or Bill is escalating, whatever the person is escalating. We're recognizing it. So what can we do to intervene now before we have to put them on a mental health hold, take a valuable bed in the ER and then a valuable bed at Semper Byron's or Napa or wherever else. And so it's that proactive engagement is beyond vital. And so the target number for CSET is about 80% proactive activity. And again, we track a lot of data on this. CARES, since they're pretty new, my guess is they're probably around 85, probably 80% proactive as well right now. Once we get more staffing with them, obviously that probably number will go up probably to 85% proactive. But again, the proactive activity directly correlates to the stopping of crises that occur in the future. And when they do occur, you can walk in if someone's very altered. I'm just like, hey, what's up, brother? How's it going? They'll say, what's up, LaFrance? And we can usually de-escalate things, divert away from a hold, or we can directly connect them with services without having an altercation, without having a fight, getting voluntary compliance. That is beyond key, is that proactive engagement and building that human connection, which really leads to all outcomes that we want. If they know me, I know them, they know my intention's good for them, we're going to get good outcomes. And we've seen that so far over the past 5 years with CSET.
Is there
much
any
appreciation for that? There's just so much appreciation for that. They've done such a fabulous job in engagement.
I am wondering, is there a method or a plan in place to kind of fight the stigma around mental illness going on? Because I feel like it does take either a person or somebody else in their lives going, you need to get help, or I need to get help. But a lot of people go, I need to get help, or I want to get my friend help, but I don't want them stigmatized by the community. I don't, or a lot of people don't understand what again, that first question, which is like, what is mental health? What is mental illness? What is a crisis situation? What is best to handle it? So is there a program to destigmatize those who need to seek mental health or those who have? Because I still feel like this is, especially like in my life, I have a lot of people that go, I don't feel like comfortable reaching out. Something's going to happen to me. I might lose a job. People are going to see me differently. And I don't know if there's a program preventing that. Like there's a lot of walks for people we've lost. There's not like walks for people who are going through mental health issues or have an illness, or who are living with family members who have it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, NAMI Humboldt, National Alliance on Mental Illness, is a nationwide organization that's one of the major goals is to reduce stigma and discrimination. So there's a lot of programs out there that work on that. We have a family-to-family class that's an 8-week-long class that's free for the community. We have support groups, 3 a week. I do 2 in Eureka, 1 in Redway. But the issue is, the more we talk about it, the more we have town hall meetings, the more we have radio shows. Let's get it out of the closet. Let's deal with it. 1 in 4 people, when you start talking about mental health and mental illness, boy, your best friend, you find out, has bipolar disorder and you never knew it. I mean, people start to come out of the closet and say, yeah, I wasn't feeling too good. I was in a psychiatric hospital, when I was young. I remember teaching, I taught special education. 2 or 3 of the teachers had bipolar disorder. Nobody knew it until I started talking about my son, and I was going through all this stuff, and they said, oh yeah, well, recovery is possible. The thing is, when people get better and they move on into their lives, they don't wear the sign, I've had mental illness, on their foreheads. You don't even know it. So that's part of it, is talking about it. Your radio show is awesome. Anything we can do to get people talking about it, is important. And I think ideas like putting mental health in malls, for treatment, mental health away from maybe jails and locked facilities, people would be more inclusive maybe to go, like Open Door has their psychiatrist. And then people go in there, they don't know if you're going for a physical or a mental health problem. So that helps people, maybe get help. But the best thing to reduce stigma and discrimination is when somebody personally that has or have a mental illness, and maybe before or after their mental illness, but they might be your best friend, and that really helps reduce stigma and discrimination as well. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, and I there's another issue that I've encountered with people, and perhaps myself included, though I've I recommend therapy to everybody. I let everybody know I'm in therapy. I think it's healthy. When I was a kid playing sports, I was told Dennis Rodman's in therapy. He was my idol when I was in basketball. And I went, great, awesome, cool. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you need a little help to make sure that, having somebody to bounce your ideas off. But one thing that I've experienced is people go, but I'm not crazy. I'm not sick enough. And I feel like that's something that needs to be handled too, because a lot of people think mentally ill and they think somebody who's suicidal or somebody who is being arrested or who needs immediate care, and they know that they think they can go through it. And I see people fall into this cycle of I'm fine, when it's very obvious they're not. And is there anything, because that's what I mean, there's so many things about destigmatization. And I think a lot of it is, especially in a culture where, say, the military culture or certain other job cultures, where if you show signs of weakness, you're told to buck it up. And people think, I should just buck it up. There's nothing wrong with me. And so I'm wondering if there's anything going on to destigmatize that too. Kind of that idea of I'm fine.
Yeah, I can jump on this one. So the Eureka Police Department, we do have we actually contract with clinicians that are set just for first responders. They have to get certified. You can't just be any clinician, you have to be certified. And so every 6 months we have a check-in with them. It's a required check-in with our clinicians. I think the biggest issue we see from personal experience of 16 years working as a cop, you see things no one should ever see, except you see them hundreds of times. And so that buildup eventually creates a lot of stress for you. Either it's anxiety or depression or whatever it is. I've been there, I deal with it. However, we have options through professionals that actually focus on first responders. I've seen therapists in the past when I was a firefighter that they had no clue what I was talking about, and it was pointless. And so for us having clinicians specially trained to work with first responders, especially police officers, is beyond vital, not only for longevity or our jobs and our families, because divorce rates are extremely high. Suicide's number one killer for cops. It's not anything else. It's suicide's number one killer for cops in this country. And so we've taken a very strong stance at the police department here to focus on officers' mental health, make sure they're healthy so they can make sure the community is also healthy.
Is that program available also, say, for like the Coast Guards that are out here, or? Yeah,
this program is just contracted with I believe out of Santa Rosa, the firm or the company. But if the Coast Guard wanted to have them as their team, they could do that as well. So, is
there a program for retirees and veterans? Not that I'm asking for personal contacts or anything, but that it is an issue, especially for retirees and veterans who went through the old school system where it was a little bit harder. I know the city of Eureka and Humboldt County has been working pretty hard on making sure that it does sound, the more that I'm talking to everybody, it sounds like every aspect of the community is almost healing from a systematic trauma of just having poor healthcare, which I'm not saying that the healthcare is perfect, though we will get more into that. And perhaps I'll get my answers question, or I can just be like, hey, can you give me some phone numbers? Right after this break, you're listening to KCZH. I'm Talvi, your local host. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to KZZH. I'm Talvi Freed. We're here with Eureka Mayor Kim Bergel, Lea Nagy from NAMI, Commander Leonard LaFrance from the Eureka PD, and Gardner Carlson, former employee of Napa State Hospital. And I do want to get into resources. I know that's usually something at the end, but pretty much because I'm like, well, I have this person in my life that has no idea where to go and what to do. And what are the resources for people in Humboldt County to go to? Say they're listening to this show and go, I need help. Obviously, NAMI is a great resource, though, without having to call a specific crisis line. If they're just like, I'm thinking about getting mental health. Again, that destigmatization aspect. Where can people go right now?
Sure. So a couple options. There's the same day services at 720 Wood Street. It is located underneath Semper Virens, which is the mental health hospital here. That is one location for a call-in. If you're looking for other assistance, 211 is an available number to call. That's it's ran by, I can't remember the name of the company who runs it. It'll come to me tonight when I'm sleeping. And there's also 988, which is a mental health hotline. In theory, I believe that the dispatch center for that is out of like Siskiyou County, but they cover Humboldt County as well. And of course, if you go online, you can find Uplift Eureka. So Uplift Eureka there's 3 real teams within Eureka. There's CSET, who's the law enforcement team. There is CARE, which is our mental health team. And there's Uplift Eureka, who's our outreach team. And so really there are 3 teams under one umbrella. They're all sibling units. And so if they reach out to Uplift Eureka and or CARE, or even call EPD and ask for CSET, our officers that are highly trained in mental health connection for resources or problem solving. It's hard to say here's one number to call because issues can be complex. And sometimes it takes a different, calling someone directly versus here's a general number to call. Very challenging.
The 998 phone number, 988.
That's the suicide line, isn't it? The new suicide line? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's for family members as well. The other thing that I suggest to people is go to your primary care doc, talk to them about your symptoms. Sometimes things are physically related, thyroid, as LaFrance mentioned, and other issues. The other thing I often talk when families call me, parents call me, I'm worried about my kid, I encourage them to come to a support group because in that group, we have lived experience and people that know the resources and have gone through a lot of the court stuff or juvenile hall or jail or, even mental health services. So that's a good way to get started. The other thing, now I hear an ad for Cal Hope with a phone number, getting on Google and searching around for local stuff. There's even, I think, a depression screening that you can take online if you're concerned that you're depressed. So like LaFrance said, there's a lot of different avenues, a lot of different things available. And I know when my son was first diagnosed, I just tried to absorb everything I could about resources and what was going on in my community, as far as what was available. So
I think the challenge is, the challenge is finding a one-stop shopping, which is not happening. And so you have to get really fairly well trained in who to call, when to call, who's the right person, who's not the right person. And I think Leah's right exactly on. Her groups are amazing. If they have a lot of information, years of shared experience, and that sometimes is more valuable than calling a 3-digit number because they probably know the system better than anybody else.
And I just also wanted to suggest that there's also things like Al-Anon and Alateen for friends and families of alcoholics would be the Al-Anon. And if there's an addiction problem, which is also mental illness, that there are 12-step programs and there are other programs for getting clean or getting support.
So not to change the topic, the topic's still mental health, though there's something called mental health courts, and I was trying to read up on it, and I'm not sure who best to ask what that is, though what is it?
Well, we had a mental health court here years ago. It was called Star Court, and it was very effective. It was a grant which ran out, but a mental health court is where people who have, committed a crime, probably more of a misdemeanor, but they can meet with the judge and they have a case manager, they have a treatment team, and the treatment team helps them, get the basics, stay on medication. And they would check in with the judge once a week. And it was just, like the black robe effect, that there's a judge and it was, in the courtroom. And it really helped people improve their lives. It really helped people follow the direction of getting help, staying on meds. There's a condition called anosognosia where people lose insight. How if we put our hand on a stove, we know it burns us and we take it off right away. Well, people with anosognosia, and they have these episodes and these crimes, they have no insight that they need help, that they need to stay on meds. In fact, there's a book called I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. This is one of the common barriers for people, I feel, for people getting treatment. When I talk to families, that's the thing I deal with the most, is they don't get it. I think my son was hospitalized 4 or 5 times in sempervirens before he got some insight. So that's a challenge. So just, by, supporting these folks and helping them stay compliant with the court. A lot of times nowadays they talk about a new system where, and I don't know a lot more about it, but mental health diversion, where instead of going to jail, they would get a care team and treatment, AOT, they call it, Laura's Law, that kind of thing. So that because incarcerating people with serious mental illness doesn't help. It doesn't help their symptoms. They don't get treatment. There are 350,000 people with SMI in prison that should be getting a different kind of help. So that's in a nutshell. LaFrance, you want to add on anything to that?
Yeah, so we have a mental health diversion program here ran by the county. But any kind of program, we see a lot of these programs come out. I see the news. I'm like, here's a new program, Care Court program. Here's some other programs they're going to push forward. AB 109. The challenge I have with a lot of these programs is they're great ideas but zero follow through, or they're a great idea with zero funding. And so, say we put someone through a diversion, mental health court. Well, maybe they have support for 3 years. Well, mental illness doesn't stop in 3 years. It's going to be a lifetime thing to address. And so they have to, we have to look at the system and say, hey, this is a lifetime issue to address. We have to fund it and also have the correct personnel to deal with this, and not just drop somebody, because they lost, they're out of the court system, or, someone got conserved after a year, they re-up and they do a eval and say, hey, you're no longer conserved, have a good day, good luck. And they're dropped off from all services. And so this is the challenge of a system that needs a lot of improvement. That's extremely challenging to work through. And yet the outcomes we see are often tragic, and it's horrifying in some regards, some of the stories. And it's just not right. And the challenge again is we're not getting, it doesn't seem like we're going to get a lot of input from folks that are working this on the street level, on the actual level. And a lot of these ideas they're great ideas. They sound great, but again, that follow through and the actual long-term outcomes aren't being reached because either lack of funding or lack of follow through and thought on this.
Well said. I can relate.
Are there programs for children right now?
Yeah, so children's program, there is a children's mental health team through the county, which they do work with kids in crisis. They do respond out. They actually work with CSET quite a bit when kids are in crisis. Sorrel Leaf in 2024, December, they should have their facility running, hopefully, up here in Eureka. I toured the facility last week, 2 weeks ago. It's an outstanding facility. It's going to be really nice. They have the right mindsets to run it, and that program Store Relief will also have a mobile response team for youth as well that are in crisis. So if we have a kiddo in crisis, we can call them, connect with them, also use our care team and CSET or patrol, whoever, to go respond, evaluate, and then direct towards the best team to help facilitate getting the kid help.
Because, you know, Talvi, kids up until now are sent out of county, away from their families, which is really hard on the kids and the families. So this Store Relief facility will be able to keep our children in Humboldt County to get mental health treatment. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, because right now, they say if we place a kid on a hold, mental health hold, they could be at the ER for up to 2 weeks, I've seen, before they actually get sent out to, you know, outside the area. And if you, and the ER staff is absolutely phenomenal. I love my folks at St. Joe's. They're extended family to us because we work so well with them and so much with them. But it's just not a therapeutic place for a 13-year-old who's in crisis to be for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I do want to give everyone a chance to have a moment during the round robin. Our round robins are where everybody kind of says any information that you feel either we did get to, we didn't get to, something you want to reiterate, something you want listeners to or watchers of the show to leave with. And Leonard, I want to start with you and also apologize. Sorry, Gardner, I want to start with you just because I feel like all the technical difficulties landed on every time you spoke, at least on my end, and I feel bad for that. So I want to give you a chance to let people know any information that you've been holding back, and everybody has 2 minutes. So if Gardner, you want to say something to all the listeners out there.
Okay, let's see. It occurred to me you were asking about what is a crisis, and I think this is very well known, but if I have a couple of minutes, this can happen to anybody, and it's just the severity, but anytime there's a trigger event and we have an escalation and then we have this loss of control. So a lot of our programs now where we can get people to understand their own trigger events, or we can actually get involved before the full escalation takes place. So a lot of these programs are doing that. And that's why they're effective. And that's why it's of great value to the people that are involved and to the community. And it actually promotes wellness. I just wanted to say that. In terms of the courts, I thought I'd throw in something because I did work with in the hospital setting where it was a lot of forensics. And there's an organization called Disability Rights of California. And what they do is that they advocate for the people that are incarcerated with mental illness in their legal cases and give them advice, but they also are available throughout the state of California. So I wanted to give them a little bit of a plug, because it's also a very valuable resource to know that it is there and can be a great resource. Other than that, there are, I am so impressed. I have not been in this community but for 3 years, and I am just so very, very impressed with the growth of the programs concerning the mentally ill. It's just wonderful. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner, for being on the show. Leonard, you have maybe 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes.
Sure. So one, I'm proud to work for a very supportive city that's looking at modernizing, progressing our programs in regards to mental illness in our community and homelessness and addiction and childhood trauma, many different issues, but very support from City Hall to our elected officials, our staff here at Eureka Police Department, the chiefs of police are very supportive. We're kind of allowed to, here's an idea and they can let us roll with it. And it's been awesome. And we've really really created a culture over the past couple of years to really be a much more in tune department for officers across the board, not just on CSET who specialize in mental illness, but also our patrol officers who are equally doing the job. They do a lot of work with folks that are on the street, folks that are mentally ill, people that are in crisis, people that are actively suicidal. And they're very, very good at de-escalation. They're very good at decision-making, and we're seeing a lot of good outcomes. I'm also really proud that we've been able to develop our CARE program to watch it from, it was an idea we had a couple years ago, and now we're fully going to be full blown here, hopefully in the next year or so, for possibly 24-hour coverage, which would be awesome. And then our Uplift team, who are our outreach team, they do a lot of different programs like housing, employment. Their numbers are phenomenal. It's just cool to work for a city where, 16 years ago when I came to police academy, I didn't think I'd be doing this or enjoying this, but this is really the way I look at policing being reimagined, and the role we also play in this, which we are important in this role. It's not always our job to be the primary role, but often we're a good focal point to navigate people through this very complex system.
Well, thank you, Commander, for your time today. And let's go, Lea.
I'm going to be short and sweet. So I'm going to just quickly read our principles of support that we end every support group with. And before I do that, just my email is leanagy@yahoo.com, LEANAGY@yahoo.com. Anybody can email me. So here's our principles of support. We will see the individual first, not the illness. We recognize mental illnesses are brain disorders. We aim for better coping skills. We find strength in sharing experiences. We reject stigma in ourselves and others. We won't judge anyone's pain as less than our own. We forgive ourselves and reject guilt. We embrace humor as healthy. We accept we cannot resolve all problems. We expect a better future in a realistic way. And then everyone says at the end, we will never give up hope. Thanks for having me on the show, Talvi.
Thank you, Lea. Kim, or Mayor Kim.
We will never give up hope. I love that. As long as we're breathing, there's hope. I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you having this opportunity for us to be here. Mental health is not a moral issue. It's not, it's not, and it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you live on the street or if you live on the hill and have all the money in the world. It doesn't matter. But the impacts certainly impact all of us. And the thing I want to just say too is that people are more than their illness. And I heard that here tonight. I'm a lot of things. I'm a mom, I'm a mayor, I work at the school. I'm not just any one thing, and no one is just their mental illness or their addiction either. And I think that's important for us to recognize. You can't catch it. People don't give it to you. You can be kind. It's okay. You won't catch it. This whole business about, people really do fear what they don't understand. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to bring forward these town halls and give people the opportunity not only to be educated, but to ask the questions that worry them or that they have concerns with, because we really, it's a community problem that needs community solutions. And the only way we're going to be able to work together is to have respectful dialogue and not to blame the victim, right? Blame shifting isn't the idea. So a healthy community lifts each other up. And I'm really grateful that the city of Eureka has made a commitment to do just that. And you'll see it in our programming. I don't need to tell you, you can just see it working in our community. And I'm so thankful for that. So lastly, I'll say, just remember, all people have value. All people have value. And, sometimes feeling invisible is a really crappy place to be. So even a smile and a hello can make a huge impact on someone's day. So thanks again, Talvi, for allowing us all to be here. I appreciate all of you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Again, we had Mayor Kim Bergel, Lea Nagy from the Humboldt branch of NAMI. We have Commander Leonard LaFrance and Gardner Carlson, former employee of Napa State Hospital. That's all the time we have today. Again, thank you to our panel. Thank you for listening. If you have any topics, suggestions, or comments on this show, feel free to email us at kzzh@accesshumboldt.net. And a reminder, Thursday Night Talks, which is what you're listening to now, replays on Friday evening at 8 p.m. right here at KZZH 96.7. You can watch the show on Access Humboldt's YouTube channel, and it will replay at a varying times over the weekend and into Monday on the Access Humboldt channel on TV. So thank you so much, and I will see you next time. And your local host, Talvi Freed.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.